Hello, this is Philip Zager at thebest3d.com with Project Dog Waffle, and in this tutorial I wanted to welcome the many new users that have found Dog Waffle on the giveaway of the day a couple of days ago, sometimes early or mid-January. And if you haven't seen Dog Waffle before, I wanted to introduce you to some of the new features. Actually, some of the features that have been around for a while, not just the new features. So this is kind of a getting started introduction. And there will be a few of these. There are so many different things. There's filters, how to work with the selections or the alpha channel, animations if you have the Howler edition, and brushes and working on the current images. So there's also layers, and they are different from Photoshop layers. They're not quite the same, and there are some limitations, but there are some good things with it too. There's the big concept of the swap buffer, the main buffer and the swap buffer, so we'll switch to that. We'll cover a number of these features. On this one here, this introductory video, I wanted to show you, first of all, how to perhaps customize your user interface a little bit, simply by going to the window menu and changing the layout. So there's a couple of things you can do for this tool panel here, the toolbar. You can make it 2 columns, or you can make it 1 column. If you have a small laptop with a screen that's not a very high resolution, it helps to bring it down to 2 columns so they don't disappear down to the bottom. The icons remain visible. Single column in this case. You can also switch which side it's on. You can have the sidebar that's currently, this one here on the right side is currently showing on the right. I can move it to the left, and you can also do some other things. The toolbar can be floating, so you can position it wherever you want. And then there are some other things, particularly the layout, the interface colors. You might like the many choices, light on dark. Some of these may need a restart of the program, not the computer, just the program. So you would have to quit Dog Waffle and start back in to have everything take effect. But anyway, so there's a lot of, let's see what we can do. Perhaps lighter on dark, flat look, dark warm. Let's try that one. All right, let's stick with this. I'm going to bring it back to the way I like it, which is not the floating. I'm going to have the toolbar on the left and the sidebar on the right side. So let's go over here and sidebar on right. Right, so I think we have most of the options that matter to me right now. There are also some other choices you can see here under the Windows settings. These are choices you may want to become familiar with, in particular for how much memory is used or pre-allocated for undo, how much undo memory. Threading also, if you have a multi-core systems, and who doesn't these days, right? I mean, the days are over when you have a single core system. For most of us, it's a dual or a quad core, maybe even a 6 or 8 core. And so you can see here what's on your machine, how many logical CPUs have been detected. I have 8. I'm running an i7 here in this case. And memory, I would recommend you increase it to the max, 256, so you are less likely to run into limitation of how much memory is, how many levels of undo you have, especially if you work with large images. You know, like those that come from a digital camera these days. You will want to have as much as possible for undo memory. There are some other options. We'll explore these later. Let's save this. And let's get started. So let's talk about brushes. There's a brush menu here. We'll cover that later. I want to just start dabbling. And when the program starts, you already have a sort of an airbrush that you can use, and you have 2 colors to choose from here. With the left button, you draw with 1 color, the primary, and with the right button, you draw with the secondary color. And those colors are also here on the right side. If this is minimized, you can click the plus sign to show it. Now there are different color selectors here, and for instance this one here, you can pick the color with the left button, and that affects the primary color. And then the secondary color you can change with the right button. So right button for secondary, left button for primary color. And so here you go, you can draw and draw over that as well. So this is the basic start for brushes. We have, brushes are essentially little dabs that you stamp. You can click them individually, and it does that with the step distance here. You can, if you increase this very large, you can see that it's creating the step distance. Let me pick a darker color here. You see it's applying that these dabs, and so those are some of the parameters that you can change. You have the step distance. You have the opacity also, so let's bring it up to the max, and now it's a little bit more opaque as a dab, as a stamp, and you can change the size from the 100% full size to something smaller. All right, now these are just some of the parameters. There are some others here, controls, and then the settings all together. You also have the mode, which is how the colors from the brush is being put into the current pixels. Is it being added? Is it replacing it? Is it all sorts of different combination modes? There's also some smear options here. And let me go and set the distance back down to a really low value so we can really see that smearing in action here. Maybe you set the size a little bit bigger. There you go. So we have that smearing happening here. And so many of the options, you can click on settings here to see them too. You may want to tack this down so that it doesn't go away after you make your one choice. There are a lot of options to explore here, but there's a lot of presets available that already have them set for you. So that there is, we're going to explore those. There is also a settings of particle brushes. Particles is a whole category, its own category of brushes, and I would also tack it down here if you want to explore with that. And let's go and set the color, the primary color, to white. Excuse me, that's the primary. We want to set the secondary color to white, so we actually erase it to white. When we click here, you can right click this, by the way. Many of these icons you can right click, and then you'll get some extra options. All right, so let's go, for instance, here with the brush itself at the very top. You can right click and aha, here it is. These are the presets. Now these are predefined brushes, and there are different categories. There are some that contain very small images. You can actually see them here too. It's the shapes, the brush shapes. Brush shape presets, right? And so there are collections of small images, and you could choose a different brush set. You could, some of them were donated by different users, like Cybersign from Martin Durr. There's an alternate 2. So what you get with those are tiny little images, like here's a butterfly, and we still have the smearing enabled. So if we turn that mode back to maybe a regular, like the default, it's just going to paint it like this. Now, say we want to have that butterfly actually appear, but like a whole bunch of them, without us having to click down for each of them, right? So what we'll do, we'll first of all increase the step distance so that we actually see a bit of a distance between them. And then we want the position to be randomized. And so that's what you do here with the brush settings. You can go for the random position. And so it's actually kind of following your brush, but it's not exactly where your mouse is. So you can increase this even more. And now you have the random position, and it's it's putting those butterflies all over. Now you might want to rotate that image, or you may want it to follow the mouse path so it rotates as you go. So you can enable the rotation. This one here is a shortcut to do that. You can also see it here. There's the angle that you can control. That's the same thing. When you click this icon, you notice this checkbox is on now. And so now the butterflies appear in different orientations depending on which way you're painting. Right, so that's one thing. But what about we want different colors? Well, you can actually have not just the position randomized, you can also have the color, or let's say the saturation, or the hue of the RGB values as randomized. So let's say, for instance, we take just the hue and we randomize that. Now we have colors that go into different areas, different very different looks. See, you've got some more bluish, some greenish, some reddish ones. I'm using the thumb wheel here to zoom in. Let's say we want to also have randomized the saturation, or the value, so that the value will make some of them brighter and some of them darker. Saturation will make it a little bit more grayish, a little bit more fully color saturated. So you can get a very nice collection of very different looking butterflies here, or brushes, very quickly. All right, so these are small images. Now you can also create what we call custom brushes. And in fact, you see here in the brush settings that you can have 3 different categories. And if I click this one here, there is no custom brush currently defined. So we need to define a custom brush. You can do that right here. And you can perhaps create a large brush with perhaps, I don't know, is it cell density? Here it is. Have the bristles visible. And so now we have fairly large dabs. Fairly large images. You can actually pick any image to become the image that your brush is carrying. In fact, even what we have here, let me undo this a little bit and pick this custom brush selection tool here, this one here. I'm going to use that to select a portion of the image, like this much here, right? And that's been picked up as a custom brush. There's another way to do that, by the way. You can select let's say the rectangle selection tool. You can go like this, and so you have the marching ants here, which you can also further emphasize by showing an alpha mode, like an overlay, so that shows you where it is selected. And now you can pick that up with the from the brush menu. You can use the selection as a brush, or you select it as brush, and so it picks that up. Now you can use the preview PRV for custom brushes, and you can now see that it's stabbing that, it's painting with that image that we picked up. You can store that. That's a common thing to do with the brushes. You may want to have this brush stored, because you will probably work with different brushes at the same time and have them available. In fact, you may want to store them or like save them, and that's what you do with the browse media right here. So here we have some predefined brushes. No further need to save them, except if you make changes to some of the parameters and you want to retain those. You can go to the browse media, tack this one down too, and then go and see what else you have. There's some beach balls here you can choose, and you can paint with those. Lots of different brushes, predefined flowers, and again, these are large images. You can make even larger images. Let's say you put the whole thing here, and then you create a new image that you pick up. So I'm going to, for instance, use the circular ellipse to alpha, and you see now everything outside is kind of turning pink. The selected inside is what's going to be what I can pick up, and I might want to blur the edge. The transition is very crisp here, so I'm going to do the Gaussian blur, but from the selection menu, and that allows me to add a little bit of a blur. And you see the transition is no longer crisp here. It's a kind of a soft transition on that. But the beauty of that is I can now go and again use the selected as a brush, and if I store this one, go to the brush and store and manage this copy, you can see that it's got the sort of a soft edge. Well, it's difficult to see in the small icon. Let me clear the image and stamp it. Oh yeah, here you can see in the preview that it has sort of a soft edge on, it's feathered towards the edges. And you can paint with that and do all sorts of fun stuff with that. Okay, so that's a quick intro to some of the brushes. Image-based brushes, small image-based, or we call them internal brushes. And when you use these, you'll have a mix of those. Some of them are small, like under the airbrush, you have small, medium, and large. These are actually still using the small internal brush. And then beyond that, when it's a number of pixels, 50 or 75 or larger, those are custom brushes. And you can see them when you pick that. You can actually see maybe opacity at 100%. You can see the preview right there, right? And so that's a type of brush we have, the custom brushes. There's also one called the anti-alias algorithmic pen, and that one is a quick fix if you really just need to draw something quick without having to worry too much about the dabs and the shape of the image. It's a different approach to how it's actually rendering that brush. And there is a lot more to explore on the special effects that can occur here. We'll get a look at that a little bit later. There is some watercolor or lifting and some other pigment lifting, and a lot of interesting side effects that you can have, post effects, some impasto or some kind of embossing, a gel effect. We'll also go and explore some other types of brushes, and now that's this one. This is a category of brushes which are particle based. So when you enable that, and you see that here, the particle brushes, and some of them you can see here too as a preset, right? You got bristle brushes and particles, lots of presets. Then you can also see down here under load, you see all these presets. So for instance, the Baddie Grass, one of my favorites, that is basically producing particles that are shooting out and remaining dark on the lower side. So you can create a bed of grass like so, and then perhaps go back to regular brushes like this here under the what is it, organic effects flowery, and put a couple of flowers there. Right, well, that's a little bit too many, so let's increase the step distance here a little bit, and there you go. So that's just a start to look at some of the many different types of brushes. We have bristle brushes that can take the image into another dimension. We have orbicals, which are sort of a 3D type of bristle, and a swarm of bees around there on a honeypot attached to the brush. And then we have foliage brushes, and those are really fun, interesting to create all sorts of trees in a single brush stroke. So let me just finish with that. I'm going to do that just like this here. I'm going to draw this one tree, one brush stroke. It's rendering it as I'm keeping and going, and then you wait a second or two and it's doing some anti-aliasing and final processing, and there you go. And that you can actually do with the alpha channel too. Create alpha. Let me do that. So you have actually a selection mask right on it, and then you pick this up and save it out as a PNG file. There you go. So let's say you pick this selection from the brush menu here. Use the selection as a brush. You can now clear this. You can show the preview. You can paint. Oh wait, I'm still on there. Let's go and disable the particle brush. There you go. So now we can actually see. When the particle brushes are still enabled, we don't see the preview, but now we have it. Let's go and disable. Let's go clear. Control D, by the way, will clear the selection, or you can use selection clear alpha. There you go. And so now we can paint this down into different places. It's a custom brush. It's an image brush now, so no longer using the particle system to generate it. But it's transparent. It has a transparent background, so you can go and store that to see it here. And of course, you will want to save that directly from the brush menu. Right there, save it as a PNG file. So, you know, Targa or PNG, where is it? There it is. My first tree. And so that's it. So you have a way to work and create these brush images, picking them up and then saving them directly from the brush menu. Of course, if it's in the image right here, you can do something like that too. You can do that and save it right there. A couple of other ways to export it. But anyway, so that will serve as a first intro to the world of many different types of brushes, and there are probably a few more that I missed, and we'll explore some of those. So thanks for watching, and welcome to Project Dog Waffle Howler 9.1.